So ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's give a big round of applause to the team. What a fabulous job they've done with GFF. Well, we believe time is of the biggest asset, so it is time for me to now kickstart with our next conversation. Scheduled at 12 Indian Standard Time, we're talking about our next session being the future of real-time payments in B2B ecosystem, trends, opportunities and challenges for businesses and fintech provider. For that, we've got our lovely moderator, Senior Lead Corporate Relationship Management, National Payments Corporation of India, Punitaa Chadha, joining us. Let's give our lady a warm round of applause. Punitaa, do join us on stage right now. Also joining us is the Director, Credit and Lending, Amazon Pay, Mayank Jain. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for your valuable time today. COO of PayU Payments, Mohit Gopal. And Country Head Banking and Payments, Fiserv, Pratip, Banerji. So let's give all of them a warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. What a fabulous panel this is going to be. And with that, may we please request you to kindly be seated, and Punitaa, for you to take it forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, lady, for the introduction and just setting the right context. And thank you for the lovely audience who has joined us for the panel. So I believe the topic is already there on the board, which speaks about the future of real-time payments in the B2B ecosystem. So when we speak about the B2B ecosystem, that has definitely gone a radical change. We have seen immense digitalization and development, right from our beloved UPI, scaling up now into the B2B segment as well, from embedded payments and making those paperwork to paperless work. We are definitely keen that how do we ensure that B2B is able to get into every aspect, make work simpler and easier. So we're just going to understand how have we advanced and how have we made life simple and how we are ensuring some of those our national vision of having financial inclusion touched as well. So we'll just run through these broad scope as we run through our speakers. So I would like to ask, maybe we can start with Mayank, like, he is from Amazon, and how does Amazon sees that B2B industry has really changed over these years, right? We had COVID, which definitely pumped into digitalization, and what do you see how the numbers have grown and how are we really moving to these real-time payments and making most out of it?
Thanks, Punitaa, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mayank. I am a director at Amazon Pay, and I run our credit and lending programs for customers as well as businesses. And I actually wanted to start off by demystifying why Amazon is here talking about B2B payments, because we are, of course, known as a B2C company. But at the same time, we also have a very big B2B ecosystem that we work with. Of course, more than 1 million sellers who sell on Amazon, more than 3 million businesses who buy on Amazon, small kirana stores to large and mid enterprises who fulfill their bulk needs through Amazon Business. And then, of course, millions of merchants who accept UPI payments through Amazon Pay. Right? So it's a very thriving ecosystem of B2B stakeholders that we work with. And the tenets that we approach B2B are almost similar to how we approach the B2C. Of course, we are on the mission to make payments simple, trusted, and rewarding. And what we see in B2B, the emphasis of each of this changes a little bit, right? Where the convenience and trust remains important, what we have seen in our B2B ecosystem is the role of access and credit and affordability is just that much enhanced, right? All businesses are always hungry for growth capital. We have seen a lot of sellers who sell on Amazon, right? It is one of their top, in our NPS promoter scores, right? One of the top things that they look for is when they sell on Amazon and they are doing a good job, they are maintaining good sales, good customer experience, low returns, then automatically we are able to facilitate better credit lines and credit products for them. And we have seen after COVID and during COVID, when a lot of payments started moving online and purchases started moving online, the digital footprint that has increased has actually helped our banking partners and lending partners to extend multiple types of products to our B2B partners, right? Earlier, we used to only facilitate term loans for our sellers. And now, in the last 3 years, the landscape has completely changed. So just in payments and credit, we now have invoice discounting, we have credit line for businesses, we have term loans, working capital loans, and now we are also launching a co-brand credit card for small businesses. So there are the demand and the kind of products we are able to offer because of the digitization of B2B payments, because of UPI, has really helped a lot of, the ecosystem that we work with. And would be happy to talk more about it. And, we work with a lot of our partners here to make it happen. So, Pratip and Mohit, why don't you add up your points as well?
Hello. Hi, my name is Pratip. I'm the country head for Fiserv. Look forward to this interaction with you. Please feel free to ask us questions after the session. But for those of you who are not familiar with what Fiserv does, maybe I'll just take a minute, right? We are in the business of moving money, right, both on the issuer and the acquirer front. We have a significantly large presence in the country, and incidentally, and we call ourselves as the common denominator, right? Across multiple banks, we are there as a technology platform. We run a very, very large platform at scale, right, which moves money both on the retail side as well as on the corporate side. So, some of the points that, and I'll just take on from, what Mayank has just said. The traditional banks, right, which were always, considered to be the ones, responsible for moving money, right, are seeing a very, very, I wouldn't say competition, but they're seeing a very different times ahead, right? They're looking at, fintechs, they're looking at, non-traditional players, coming into this space. That's changing the game completely, right? Now, from our perspective, what we see is that there are very different use cases that are coming up, right? This entire conference is about how the fintechs are addressing those challenges, right? B2B payments, or whether it is, payments which are B2C, right, run on some very, very strong technology foundations, right? Maybe during the course of the, conversation, when we, get to that, I will probably, like to talk about, how the technology is supporting it, right? What do we see as, some of the challenges? And, where do we feel that, we could try and, make some strides? So, I'll hand it back to you, Mohit.
Yeah, so I think we could largely understand that how Amazon Pay and Fiserv are, actually excelling how we can digitalize and make it, cash more readily available, and making the small merchants more effective in doing the business, maintaining their books, making those reconciliations more error-free, because the manual transactions and processes are really tiresome. But then I would just like to, we can come to the later half speaking about the goods and the bads. But I was also keen if we can speak how the real-time payments is helping drive the financial inclusion agenda, because largely when we're speaking about digitalization, we are wanting that, every Indian is being touched with one or the other digital instrument. So maybe Mayank, you would like to say, because Amazon definitely has a huge seller network, and those are small merchants. So how do you think that serves to the financial inclusion purpose?
Absolutely. So, as I was touching upon, I think one of the needs all our business partners have is the growth capital. Yes. And I touched a little bit about, but let me give a little bit more details on this. So, in the last 3-4 years, what we have seen, with the digital payments happening, with the GST data getting available, with even very easy way of putting, auto pay and simplification of NACH, right? And digitization of even the KYC services. We have seen the TATs and the kind of underwriting we are able to offer to our, seller partners. The banks earlier would require about 15 days to process these loans. Now these same partners are able to process these loans within 48 hours, right? So that has speeded up this whole digitization of the full stack and availability of far more data points from all these different ecosystems of data, whether it's GST, whether it's UPI payments, has really helped our lending partners really expand the coverage of the sellers they were able to give loans to, and also make the process much simpler, right? Otherwise, it used to be a long process, and many times the sellers used to drop off because they have to run a business. They cannot spend this much time just trying to get a loan. Now the process is like a one-click button, right? Also, because of digitization, we have seen, it's become very easy to put a lien. Let's say that, the sellers, with in partnership with the lenders, are able to channel some part of their sales automatically to service their loans and credit lines. And then they are able to expand those temporarily And this is all because of the digitization. Earlier, if you had to do this, you had to again do a reapplication, a new line had to be issued, it had to be stopped down, and nobody was interested in doing it for 3 months. But now all of that happens like with a click of button. So that has expanded the market for us, really.
That helps to bring all those small merchants also onto this network. So I was just reading one of those articles, and I could come across that the B2B payments spend is currently approximately 6 to 7 trillion, and it's expected to go to 10 trillion and another in this decade. So that itself indicates that yes, the B2B has already got the flavor of real-time payments and is just trying to explore every new element, that how we get every small merchant, every small business player on this digital platform. So it's like, there are no free lunches, as it says. Everything that has advancements has its own goods and bad. So I would request Mohit, if he can throw some light on what does he perceive with these advancements. What are the goods and the bads that we sail through as we take this opportunity?
Hi, can you hear me back there? Great. Real-time payments aren't new. The first real-time payment system actually came out in Japan back in 1973. So we're in the 50th year of real-time payments. Sure, the Japanese did it only during weekdays. They didn't do work on the weekends then. But think about it. A few hundred years back, pirates of the Caribbean perhaps, what were they doing? People were transporting gold and silver from the colonies back into Europe. And there was an American bank robber who was once asked, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is, right? So if you think about it, there has been that evolution of money. Gradually now today, if you watch Money Heist, people rob mints or printing presses. But now as money becomes digital, you have this entire problem that you don't have to worry about pirates or bank robbers anymore. It's that geek out there whom you have to worry about, who's better at computing than you are, right? So real-time payments are great because you can instantly transport money from the origin to the destination, which means that you reduce for businesses your working capital cycle. Most businesses which fail because they can't get their working capital cycle right. And if you imagine this huge, big boxer is fighting this small boxer. So that small boxer has to play to his or her strengths, which is speed, agility, right? Get that money to work more. So today, if you think about it, India leads the world in real-time payments. And we do it for a reason, because we want every last citizen of ours, every person who's running a small business to be able to utilize capital better, right? So that's why real-time payments are very, very important. We have done a great job on the P2P side and also on the P2M side. But B2B is still emerging, right? And I think that's what this generation is going to be all about. And in payments, we were talking earlier, 5 years is a generation, right? It's not a long time. This coming decade is going to see so much of disruption just in B2B payments. Huge volumes of funds are going to move. It's going to change the way banks operate, because that money, that float, is no longer going to be sitting in a bank account, in a current account, which is where it's doing nothing except for the bank. It's actually going to be moving into the real economy, right? So there are going to be challenges, but there are going to be lots of advantages. I'll talk more later, but Banerji just sort of chime in with the tech layer and where we are at that.
Sure. And just before we get to that, right? Interestingly, I was speaking with somebody yesterday night, and he was making a point. He said that on the retail side, right now we have about 90 million cards, right? Which is basically a form factor for lending, right? Unsecured lending. Of them, only about 35 million unique users, right? Or unique clients. Now, look at the flip side of how the US has been so far, right? For every 100 cards, for every 100 people, right, there are 326 cards, right? Compare that to in Indian here or in India, for every 100 people we have 3 cards. There's data from the Sybils of the world, which tells us that there is a credit score available for almost about 600 million Indians today, right? Which means that they have an access to credit, right? So look at the huge gap, right? That's there in terms of just the availability, right? Now, UPI changed a lot of things for us, right? In terms of, real-time money movement. They're already at about 350 million users, right? Volumes are growing. I'm sure all of us, who spent a day here knows exactly, how the volumes have scaled up, right? Now, if I come back and look at, what is it that's enabling that, right? Definitely it's technology, right? But along with the technology, there are certain challenges also that, we have to look at, right? The first and foremost is the security, and the fraud, right? Which has been talked about to death almost, right? In every forum, right? But it is a reality, right? There are, it's still prone to human errors, right? There was an incident in Japan in 2020 wherein a bank, right, transferred a duplicate payment of billions of yens, right? Just because of a manual error, right? So I think those are things that, cannot be taken away, irrespective of, what the technology can do to, scale it up, right? I think, the other point that I wanted to, make, and which, the RBI governor also, spoke about yesterday, is that how do we make, this to be adopted by the masses, and how do we look at, bringing in global interoperability, right? Now, real-time payments, is by definition, it's almost real time, right? It took me about 3 hours today to, reach this venue from my residence, right? And I was wondering that, will I wait, even for 5 minutes for my transaction not to, I'll start panicking, right? But for certain things, we've, got used to it, right? So look at the advancement that the payment world has seen over the last decade or so, right? On Google Pay, if I don't, there's somebody who delivers, and if I don't get that, instant, acknowledgement, that guy will not move out, right? He will keep standing there, right? Irrespective of, what time of the night it is. So I think, trying to, just demystify it from a technology perspective, technology today is available, right? I think the banks have started, adopting to it. The challenges that we see are in terms of, building scale. We never thought, at our end, right, the kind of boom that we started seeing on the UPI transactions, right? It suddenly, started, changing paradigms for us in terms of how much do we size and what kind of capacity do we, try and look at it? Do we look at certain reports and then figure out? Do we start, looking at, how the banks are, using it? There was, when, 5 years back, we had a spend volume, we had some transaction volumes, we had some metrics on which, we would probably try and, do our capacity planning. I think all of that is safely out of the window today, right? You are not able to, gauge the amount of, with credit on UPI, coming in. We will potentially see a very significant uptake in terms of just the number of transactions and the new customers that will be, brought into this fold, right? So I think, technology will always play a very, very, critical role, right? In terms of, trying to facilitate, this. And I think, what UPI has done, right? It's brought us not only at par with, the other, global RTP players like, TCH or a Zengin or an NPP, but it's also, now when you go, the last few occasions that I've gone to attend an international conference, right? People will, spend time with you because you're coming in from India, right? And want to understand what's the India story. Hey, what are you guys doing, right? Yeah. What is this UPI, right? What is, how can we try and, make this more available, right? So I think there's a very, very positive shift, right? Moving forward, I definitely feel that, there are challenges that, we need to solve, right? Real-time payments is still in its nascency when it comes to, the corporate side, right? We've done a significant amount of, we've covered significant ground on the retail side, right? And thanks to, a lot of stuff that is coming out from the fintechs, and the banks. But on the corporate side, I think, even in India, the adoption has been fairly low, right? You have corporate cards as a variant, right? Which is, something that gets supported by the bank's platform, right? But are we actually using those corporate cards to, make B2B payments, right? What are those challenges that we are looking at, which still needs to be solved, right? Transfer is instant, right? A couple of days back, the SEBI, chairman, made a, announcement saying that, the settlements will be, in almost about an hour, right? That's almost near real time, right? But I think the bigger challenge is that, what we are seeing is that reversals are not real time, right? I can transfer the money, right? The money gets, you will get an acknowledgement, but the minute you raise a dispute, right, you're not getting it as quickly, right? It still takes time, right? So there are those challenges, which still needs to be, fixed for the technology, for the industry, for the economy at large, right? Somebody, who's there, maybe at a remote part, of the country, right? If he makes a wrong transaction, I have done it, right? By mistake, I wanted to transfer to, somebody, I picked up another number and I've transferred it to another person, right? But the reversal takes time, right? So I think those are, things that, we still need to, solve for.
I would just like to pick up on those points. Like, we've been fairly talking about UPI, and UPI is definitely the talk of town. But just would like to add that during this GFF days, we've also launched a merchant credit card, right? Because we totally understand that B2B is a domain where there's a lot to explore, and the easy availability of credit is something that's really required to get into the market and have these smooth documentation. And I believe I would just like to pick up on another point, quite sensitive, that the customer definitely gets, or these small retail players, these small suppliers, right? They definitely get the payment instantly, but then reversal is a trouble. But then at NPCIN, we are also working on that solution as well. I believe UDIR, if this forum is well aware, we're working on a merchant automated reversal mechanism too, because we understand the pain points that when a transaction is done and a human is bound to do an error, and how tough it is to reverse it back. And I was just trying to what I can understand is that technology is definitely going to upgrade, and we have to, this is a continuous learning, right? And acceptance would be eventually, because we got the retail customers and the common people like us to get into the digital platform. And for these suppliers, the ticket size is really big, so they'll take time. But I would just like to touch base with another point as well with this, that I believe the foray of real-time payments into the B2B domain has also brought in one more player in this segment. That's the technical service providers, right? And that's where I feel that they are the one who are playing an elementary role in getting the ends meet. So maybe Mohit from PayU, we can hear like how are the TSPs getting this turnaround that real-time payments are really a boon for the B2B ecosystem. Because if the TSPs are not there, because till now we had the merchants, the suppliers, and the banks.
I spoke earlier that money today exists in digital form, right? So at the end, any transaction, whether it's a card transaction, UPI, etc., is just the transfer of some bits and bytes sitting in one particular domain to another one, right? It's just digital transfers. And what's the real challenge here? The real challenge is actually something very intrinsic to human beings, which is time and decisions. If I asked you a question right now, would you like tea or coffee? You would know your preferences. I like black coffee personally, so if anybody wants to buy me coffee later, please feel free to do so. If I asked you something a bit more complicated, say spell a word like Mississippi, some of you may get it, some of you may not. If I give you more time, chances are you will get it because you could go back, search on Google. But if I asked you to change jobs or get married or switch, live in another country, you may require more time to make that decision. But does that mean that infinite time will give you perfect decisioning? No. I have a theory which is don't give people too much time to make decisions because they'll find new and innovative ways to screw it up, right? So in reality, what are we playing with? Real-time payments is about instant decisioning and getting it right the first time. So even today, if you think about a corporate net banking flow, it's very similar to a normal net banking flow, except that there's a maker checker in between, right? And then you run a batch and go back and make sure that somebody will see that looks right. Right? Otherwise, you could do it instantly. So all I would like to talk about here is that when you're making decisions under pressure, with a time constraint, you better get it right, have flows which ensure that things work out well. So the role of a TSP is to ensure all of this happens in a more seamless form factor, right? Make sure that there are fraud and risk checks, there are AML checks, there are maker checker flows which are out there. There's possibly a credit line which is being extended by a bank or a financial institution. So I think that's what you're really trying to build, these layers around payments. The payment itself, the transaction side of payments is the easiest part. Settlements is harder, refunds is harder, and dispute resolution is the toughest, right? And that's why often enough you'll find a new payment system will be launched, which is great at the transaction side of it, and then fraud gradually starts rising. Because a fraudster always plays on time. They will put you under pressure. You'll get an email soon from somebody pretending to be your CEO saying, transfer this money, I need it right now. Or a family member who will call you, and the voice will be that of your family member, because if you think AI-assisted fraud is not going to rise, it is going to. And they'll say, transfer this money, they will have enough of your details out there. What will you do under pressure? If given time, you would have made the right decision. So the entire challenge with real-time payments is just about building these frameworks right up front, right?
I actually add one point to this. I think the importance of time, we see that, see these days, taking for example for businesses buying on Amazon, they are not first going and looking for a credit line or a loan and then making the purchase. They are there to make a purchase. They realize that there is something that they can avail now, but maybe they don't have funds for it. We see 70 to 80% of the provisioning of the credit lines, as you mentioned, Mohit, happen real time in the shopping flow, right? So they are there, and that's the moment of truth. People are not going to look, whether it's customers or even businesses, right? They're not looking for these credit lines beforehand. They discover them there. With UPI on credit, that's going to happen, right? They discover it there, they get provisioned there, and they can use it there and then, right? That's the way the commerce is flowing now. And the real-time nature of these payments really make it happen. And the TSPs, the role of TSPs to do a lot of these parallel activities, like whether the fraud checks, whether the additional data required for underwriting, all that comes into the play. And I think that's where a lot of opportunity for TSPs is there. How can they get these things done in the moment of truth?
So, definitely, it brings in the new player in the system, and they are the one who they are the actual one who are playing an elementary role in getting the real-time payments to the B2B ecosystem and the platform. And definitely, we are well aware that, the kind of the setup that we have, it has a huge range of these mid and small size, and the MSME domain and the MSME sector is one that has a huge potential, and if their needs are well catered, they can help us take the business to definitely exponentially high levels. And that's where we understand that there are some large players doing their best, right? And with every good and bad, the best side, yes, the payments can be real time, the reconciliations are much easy to maintain. And then some of those drawbacks that we see that, yeah, the frauds have to be kept well checked. Reversals are definitely, which will be, I believe, an ongoing story, and there has to be deliberations and continuous efforts to fix it. And the TSPs and definitely NPCI will be making things smoother. So I believe this, we have just started the journey of, getting into this real-time payments for the B2B. And we've been able to capture a lot on the retail side. And this is going to be scaling up further to the higher levels, right? So I would say that we have covered quite a bit from our side, and maybe we can have some questions from the audience that you would like to know or explore further.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get the mic passed to you.
Hi, my question is to Mayank. Basically, I would just like to understand that whether different set of regulation for fintech financing in credit, basically providing credit line, let's say asset classification being different. Let's not call it SMA 0, SMA 1 if there is a default because it's a different set of customer who may have defaulted for other reason, not for intentionally defaulting the same. Will it attract more business for fintech? Do you think so, or the current set of regulation is good enough to take the business ahead?
See, overall, if you see the arc of regulations, especially in the last few years, I think that has been a great boon, in terms of driving the trust on both sides, on the demand as well as supply. So if you see on the demand side, a lot of customers in India, we have seen traditionally people have been coy about taking credit. We've been known as an economy of savers because there is also a big barrier of trust, right? And lack of transparency, like what are the penal charges, what is going to happen if I take it, if I miss the payment, what will happen. I think a lot of the digital lending guidelines that we have seen in the last few months and quarters has actually clarified all of that, brought a lot more transparency to the process, and we see that a lot more customers have become a lot more comfortable, right, both in the consumer side as well as on the business side, right, small businesses especially have become far more comfortable availing these services and using them more confidently. So I think on one end, like on the demand side, this has really helped. On the supply side, all these, this last 3 days have been all about how the government and RBI and bodies like NPCI have pushed the arc of digitization, which is actually making it easy for people. I think you took a great example. 600 million people having bureau scores. I never used to believe those things, and I used to always have debates with my bureau friends that how can 600 million people have credit scores and then everybody gets rejected when they apply for a loan, right? But the fact of the matter is that now the payments related data, what RBI just spoke about, like frictionless credit, I think all that is becoming a reality, and there is an active role that the regulations are playing in making the market bigger, the players more comfortable, the whole system more transparent and customer centric. So I think that's a great opportunity for fintechs, right? To specific to your question, to go, like why can't we go to the 350 million people who are already transacting on UPI and businesses that will start transacting on UPI? Why can't and the fintechs will have to lead the way in that, right? Defining more innovative ways of catching the customer in their moment of need, right? Solving for that and making it easy for them to get it. I think that's where the opportunity lies, I feel.
Sure, thank you. Can we get a mic quickly passed to our gentleman out here? We'll take 2 more questions in paucity of time. Just 2 more. One out here to the gentleman and one here since you raised. And we'll see how time goes.
Hello, this is a great panel. I'm Matt Gamzer from the IFC. Whether payments are real time or old school, if we look at the buyers and sellers, the one thing that's certain is that the smaller one in that equation has the least determination over the time, regardless of the payment system. Can you see any ways in which the emerging B2B ecosystem can do anything in India to help give the smaller of the 2 Bs more control over the timing of the payment? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great question. I'll just start by taking that to another extreme. If you think about a cross-border money transfer, right? That's where somebody who's gone as a laborer to another country, earning a bare minimum wage and trying to send that money back to their family suffers the most, simply because both the timing and the cost is going to be disproportionate as compared to a very large corporate trying to make that same transfer. So I think from that perspective, what we have done really well so far in India has been that whether it's IMPS or RTGS or NEFT, has been that there is a layer which has been created which allows for payments to be made in real time or near real time, and I think that works really well. What we now need to do is extend the frameworks which are already created. For example, UPI runs on an IMPS layer. Similarly, what is it that we can do with what we already have? And that's what earlier we spoke about TSPs, but we can also talk about banks or fintechs. How can we use the existing infrastructure and actually enable payments to happen for everybody? NPCI has a subsidiary called NBBL, which is actually with regard to bill payments. And that's something which is again democratized bill payments for everybody. So I think like that, there are all these moving pieces which we have, all of these pieces in the jigsaw which are actually coming together. And I think that's one of the reasons why I generally feel that India is at the heart of the payments revolution in the world. And India will at least become an exporter, not necessarily of payments, but of payment thought and thinking. And that is something which this is a great sandbox for us to learn. The RBI calls it the regulatory sandbox. But really, this is a sandbox for all of us to learn. For the fintechs and financial institutions, learn here and potentially expand elsewhere. And I think you will find that at least when it comes to real-time payments, it's been emerging economies which actually dominate real-time payments simply because you want that money to work faster and harder. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. May we have our gentleman out here? So your name and a concise question.
My name is Gaurav Kundra.
Can we get the mic on? Yeah, Gaurav, we could hear you at the end.
Hello, my name is Gaurav Kundra. I just want to ask, at the age of 18, a gentleman cheat his friends. At the age of 25, they cheat relatives. At the age of 30, they cheat the businessman, right? But they're still first priority to take a loan from a businessman only, not from you guys. How you are like converting them to take a loan from you guys? Because a business person is flexible, like, but you guys are not flexible. You guys just report to the CIBIL right away, just after the first EMI. So how you are catering and converting those people?
Honestly, the context of the question, I'm not too
Yeah,
sure
maybe-
how relevant that is, but then...
Sorry, not really. I just, because you are
It's a great
giving a
que- it's a great question.
Gaurav, we've understood, we've understood. Let
Let me try and, answer this. I think we are, when we're saying that, we are probably in a panel which is discussing real-time payments, the credit decisioning, right, is always with the issuer banks, right, which means that, they will have a set of rules which will basically profile you, right, at the back end, right. So what happens when I, put in an application, right, you have a history of, a lot of transactions, your repayments, etc., right? You have a CIBIL score, you have, other experience scores available. Based on that, there are some algorithms which are built in, which will basically decide, whether a loan, is given a credit, rating is, issued for you. Based on that parameter, it is done. I don't think we've crossed that stage, wherein every individual application is looked at, by an individual, sitting on the table. It's done by, a system, right? There are exceptions which will go to the, to an approver. There's a maker-checker model. Or in the case of, if your question is, specific to business loans, right? Then I think, again, probably, there could be a different, set of, algorithms there. But I think it's a different, it's a bank's, prerogative to be able to, look at, how they should underwrite credit and what algorithms they use to, find out. Because delinquency is a problem, right? NPS has been a problem for Indian, banks for a long, long time. I think it's becoming, better, in control because of the processes that are being brought in now.
Thank you so much for your...
I'll
Yes,
just
sir.
add to that because it's such a great question, right? So what you should ideally do is catch them young and jail him. Right? No, but to be honest, right? What you speak about is that in history, patterns tend to repeat. And so therefore, what we all like to do always is try to understand a pattern of behavior digitally and then try to actually ensure that things don't go wrong, right? And the real challenge with B2B payments is exactly that. The quantum is much, much larger. So a single transaction going wrong or being fraudulent can actually ruin somebody's business. And that's why it's important to build the frameworks around how you actually prevent all of this.
Sure, thank you. We'll just take one last question to the lady out here. Can we give her quickly? Ma'am, a very concise question with your name at the start, because we've got another 3 minutes.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. My question is to Mr. Mohit Gopal. So my name is Zaitoon. Basically, you spoke about corporates, large corporates, how do they do their payments? They have a maker checker and an authorizer to, carry out these bulk payments. Having said and done, banks have come up with some host-to-host facilities, which is like still considered a very traditional way of doing payments. Why do you think so far nobody in the fintech industry or in this, global space has tried to find out a solution apart from the host-to-host that traditionally banks have to offer? What's your take on this?
I think at least in banking will always want to remain a slightly conservative industry, because banking at the end is about trust. You are leaving your money with somebody. You would want to make sure it's there when you return, right? So you want to build on that framework of trust at all points. But the other thing is, for a small business, the biggest challenge is when a startup or a small business is trying to compete in today's world with a very large corporate. That founder does not have hundreds of people who can manage multiple things. When it comes to payments, chances are high that the founder will be making the payments at the end of the day, right? And therefore, what we really want to do is just build that framework of ensuring that you have visibility on what actions you're taking, the decisions which you're taking, you have clarity of thought. There are system generated checks which are already there. There are ways to actually prevent misuse of the system, and there are ways, in case things go wrong, for you to actually go back and seek redressal in some shape and form, right? And that's why building things out takes time. In theory, today, all the pipes and the ecosystem plays are there to actually ensure whatever you want can be done. But we will do that gradually and carefully, right? And I think that's what, that maturity is something which we now have, and I think that maturity is what we will take to the rest of the world.
Sure. Thank you so much.